And we're just so thrilled. I am particularly thrilled to be here with who has become one of my favorite writers of all time, Chris Whitaker. I can read Chris's bio for you, but I think once you read his book, you will be astonished. He's the award-winning author of Tall Oaks, All the Wicked Girls, and the New York Times bestseller, We Begin at the End. His latest novel, All the Colors of the Dark, begins in 1975 in a small town in Missouri where Patch, a local boy, saves a young girl, and in doing so, leaves heartache in his wake. It's a novel that blends genres. It is a story of bravery and grief, love and obsession, small town America. And it is about hope and love in a time when we need so much of it. As you will hear, Chris is from the UK. You'll hear that very soon, but he really understands small town America, and I think you will be astonished to learn about his story and the story of this book. I said on last night, but also on television, it's my favorite book that I've ever chosen for the book club that I started. I immediately got a lot of texts from writer friends with some choice words. It's sort of like telling my daughter Mila that she's my favorite child, which, if we're all honest, we have a favorite child depending on the day.
Yeah.
Chris is extraordinary. This book will break your heart and then put it back together again. And I just want to thank you all for joining us this morning. So, Chris, your incredible book, which again I've said is one of my favorites of all time, is so incredible. It's out tomorrow. It isn't even out, hit #1 on Amazon, beating, and I like this man a lot, but Dr. Fauci's book, which is extraordinary and really unheard of. How does it feel to finally have it out in the world?
We call that the Jenna effect, what happened, because before that, I think we'd sold a couple of thousand pre-orders and then like 10,000 in a day or something, so it went mad. Doesn't feel quite real. I can't believe it's tomorrow. Yeah, it feels like, because we first spoke like a year ago.
Yes.
And Jenna read a really early copy that I didn't want to go out because it was covered. It was kind of full of mistakes, which you said you didn't notice.
No, I didn't notice.
I was like dying, like, don't send it out, don't send it to Jenna. She's going to think I'm an idiot. And you didn't think I was an idiot.
No.
And now look what's happened.
I think he's quite possibly one of the most brilliant writers that I've ever had the chance to read. Last night we had a little event at Explorers Bookstore, which is y'all's local indie bookstore, which is a great place to hang out. And I got to stand next to you as a man opened it and started reading it. And it was the first time you saw that, other than your girlfriend or your agent or, me. What did that feel like?
It was the first time I'd seen the book, the finished book, because I was supposed to get loads sent to the UK and they were delayed. So I walked in and saw the finished book with the Read With Jenna sticker on the front of it. And I wanted to go over to him and ask him what he was thinking of the book, but apparently it's like a real faux pas. You're not supposed to do it. Like if I see someone reading my book, I never go over. I did see someone reading it once, and I was wearing the same shirt that I had on in the author photo. and so I didn't want him to think that I just had one shirt. So I didn't go over, and I regret it because
Well, this is really the good thing about us pairing up, because he wasn't allowed to ask the man, but I'm like his agent or cheerleader.
You went straight in.
I went straight in. I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I've only read the first couple sentences, but it's brilliant." Okay, so let's talk about you a little bit. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your childhood. I know it was not always easy.
It wasn't always easy. It was kind of the inspiration for this book. Patch in the book goes through a difficult time at the start of the book. He sees a girl being abducted, steps in, gets stabbed and taken himself. And that's kind of like a sliding doors moment in his life. And I look back over my life, and I've had quite a strange life. And I thought that all the kind of bad things that have happened lead back to my childhood. And I'm not someone that likes to blame their childhood. I just think there is a pattern. There's an undeniable pattern. My parents divorced when I was quite young, and my mum kind of started dating the worst men, like really not very nice. And one of them was a real drinker, and he used to get angry like all the time. He used to call me a brat. I was quite quiet, I was like, just would stay out of the way. And he came into my room one night and pulled me out of bed when I was asleep. And we heard my arm break, me and him. And I started crying because I was 10. And he told me to stop crying and then wouldn't let me get any help or anything. So I had a night in my room in the dark with a broken arm as a 10-year-old without being able to cry or anything. And I feel like it was kind of pivotal. Like, I don't feel like I was the same after that. And I had to tell my parents that I'd hurt it playing football, and made up, a story to stick to so that I wouldn't get in trouble and he wouldn't get in trouble. And it was really tough. And I haven't slept well since then. A lifetime of sleep problems, because I think subconsciously I don't feel safe when I lie down to sleep, and it's really annoying for my partner because I startle awake constantly. Oh. And not long after that happened, he burnt my leg with a cigarette, and I remember my mum was there, my brother, and he said, "Oh, you bumped into me," and I know that I didn't bump into him, and I just kind of took it, and from then on became like excessively polite. And I have this thing where it's really, because I didn't want him to think I was a brat and then be, kind of lay into me. Yeah. So I do this annoying thing where I ask if I can have a drink of water and things like that. And it's a real battle, and I know it's annoying to my partner, and, and it's a bit weird. And like, if I can open a window, and I have to physically stop myself asking because I don't want to impose. And so I had all these problems, which kind of led to things that happened later on.
The Patch is a misfit. And he meets this young girl who will be one of your, is mine. I'm not going to put it on you, but I can guarantee you will be one of your favorite characters you've ever read. And I think they bond on the fact, their loneliness, their loss.
Yeah.
Did you feel lonely and sort of like a misfit in the way that Patch and Saint do?
Yeah, I think I still do, a little bit, like slight imposter syndrome. But I know loads of writers that feel like that. I think because I didn't go to university, didn't do well at school, didn't do creative writing course or anything like that. And I always feel like when I meet another author, I feel like they know way more than I do. And like when I'm writing, I'll always be kind of striving for a sentence or a paragraph, and never quite getting there. It's all like slightly out of reach. And then I'll read a book like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and it's so, perfect. And there's such a kind of natural turn of phrase. And that's what I kind of keep chasing. But I suppose it keeps me striving to be a better writer.
His turn of phrases in this book are impeccable. So that is imposter syndrome at its finest.
Yeah.
In fact, I have pages and pages of highlighted text of how beautiful it is. So yes, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm good enough, I'm strong enough, or whatever the phrase was. Gosh darn it, people like me.
It's a bit like therapy. It's like a group therapy session.
This is like a group therapy. No, it's really nice to speak in front of a crowd of strangers about your darkest moments.
Well, I think so. I do actually think it takes the power away.
Yeah, it does.
Because it's something
you're telling your story.
Yeah, and the more you talk about it, the less power it has over you.
So your childhood was filled with hard things. Yeah. And then your career trajectory is absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Can you fill everybody
I can. In? So I left school. I went to a really rough school in London. Amy Winehouse went to my school. That's the claim to fame.
Who went to your school?
Amy Winehouse.
Oh yes, heard of her.
But she got like plucked out because she was so talented and went to the Brit school, and then they left me behind. And so I did really badly at school, and kind of had a group of friends that used to get in trouble, but they knew what they wanted to do. They were like on a career path from kind of A levels or GCSEs, which I think you have something different here.
Yeah, SATs.
But I didn't know what I wanted to do, and the night before my economics exam, I went out and got really drunk, and then I missed the exam, and my parents were like really fuming, and that kind of put paid to university. But I wanted to get out there. I kind of had this naive belief that a career path would find me. You know, I'd settle into something that I was supposed to do. And I bounced around from job to job. I did bar work and sold electrical cabling and just a load of rubbish jobs. And I was working as a real estate agent and kind of like an office junior. And I was out in London, North London, and was putting leaflets through people's doors. And it was early, like 9:30 in the morning. And someone came up to me and asked to borrow my cell phone. And I thought, I'm going to get mugged because all my friends have been mugged. And like, it's London, and it's kind of... It's not a rite of passage, but it happens a lot. And I was 19, and he was on his own and not very big, so I thought, I'm going to fight him. I'm not going to give my phone. So we were like swinging at each other, and I think it was okay. You know, I had a bit of a black eye. I'd been in loads of fights before that. And then he pulled out a kitchen knife, and I thought this was a big knife. I thought, there's no way he's going to use it. And then he was punching me again in the side, and I didn't realise he was stabbing me. And I had a white shirt on, and we both stopped and looked down. It was just completely red. And then he went to stab me in the chest. This is for my phone. And I dropped the phone, and it smashed, and he picked up the pieces and ran off. And so I was kind of stuck on this street with no one to help me. Managed to get back to my car, drove back to the hospital, and just as I was blacking out, and got stitched back together. And kind of just had loads of scars that I've still got now. I tell my kids that I make things up. They're old enough now, they found stuff online that really happened. I used to say I got bitten by a shark and things like that. And because I think the truth is kind of scary to a kid.
Yes.
And then afterwards, my friends kind of slapped me on the back in the way that guys do. And you were expected to get on with it. And I didn't know about PTSD. And so I would sit down at night and not able to sleep, would play it over in my head and kind of work out what I could have done differently. And then I wasn't eating, couldn't read a book. I would go running and run so far that I'd have to get a bus back, like just in the middle of nowhere. And it got really bad, and I was like really contemplating suicide. I was in such a bad way. I was drinking, taking drugs, and I went into the library and I borrowed a self-help book. And it talked about a technique where you take the trauma and you write about it, but you change the people involved to fictional characters, change the ending to something you're comfortable with, like take the power back and take control back, and you change the location to the last place you were happy. And that was the first time I ever wrote anything since school, like creatively. And I wrote, just changed myself to a girl, set it in the US because my dad took us to Disney World, so it was like my safe place, like my happy place to write. And then kind of got through it really slowly. And then like, I went out and flipped my car onto its roof when I was drunk, and I have a scar down my cheek, and didn't tell anyone what was going on. Like I've never asked for help, and it's like to my detriment. And eventually kind of came through that, but then decided I needed a career. So I picked up a newspaper, just so happened to open a page where there was a stockbroker. And there was a picture of this guy with a Ferrari, and I just thought, I'm going to be a stockbroker, you know. It doesn't matter that I'm terrible at maths, I'm just going to be a stockbroker. So I went out and kind of sat in the lobbies of these big banks, and they all kicked me out. And then one of them took pity on me and gave me a job as a broker, and I loved it. Like, it was loads of drink and drugs, which wasn't good for me. But it was kind of wild, you know. It was back when the city was a different place. And so I'd be out all the time, client entertaining, like working all night. And I used to go to this strip club in London called Stringfellows. It's a really famous strip club. And
I told y'all it was wild. I tried to prepare you.
I was such good friends with the girls that worked there that they all came to my wedding. And they were all in the back row of the church. Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to skip forward. So I really wanted to be a trader. Trader doesn't have clients, you know, they take the company money, reinvest it. And my boss said, if you lose $10,000, you stop trading. And on my first day, I lost $2 million. Yeah.
Again, I tried to warn you.
Yeah. And didn't tell anyone, which is illegal. And got myself into loads of trouble. I managed to keep it going for a bit, and then came in one day, and there was like a glass boardroom, and a big table, and lawyers, and everyone, and just an empty seat at the end of the table for me. And they got me to sign something, and they said, we'll either go to the police or you can pay us back half of it. So I just signed it. I was 24, and went home on the train in $1 million of debt, and was really stressed again, obviously. So found my way back to writing again for the second time. And got through it with writing, but it took years to pay it back. And
but you've paid it.
I've still got the piece of paper that says I'm debt-free.
We should clap for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as you see, his trajectory to sitting here is not an obvious one at all. You say writing saved your life. Mm-hmm. You've spoken a little bit about that. But in this book, there is a moment where Patch, who saves a girl and therefore gets taken, I'm not going to tell you too much because I know you haven't read it. He thinks, oh, if I hadn't done that, how could my life have been different? It's sort of that sliding doors moment.
Yeah.
Do you ever think, obviously you could have been killed multiple times, but do you ever think like, oh gosh, if I hadn't done this, my life could have been...
I think it's a dangerous way to think sometimes because you never know where you would have been. But I think me and my brother are quite similar, and he had a comparatively easy ride. Went to a brilliant university, got a job, settled down straight away. My parents didn't have to worry about him. And I sometimes think that on that night, our kind of paths diverged, and I went down a different road. And I know that I wouldn't be sitting here, certainly not sitting here talking to you, had it not happened, because I wouldn't write the books that I write. I probably wouldn't have found my way to writing. But it's the question of, is it worth it? And that's the difficult one, isn't it? Because I tell my kids, if someone comes up to you and asks you for something, just give it to them. Because it's kind of mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't remember it being a choice. Like Patch in the book steps in and says, is it a brave thing that he's done if he didn't consciously choose it? I don't remember choosing not to run away or choosing not to give my phone. I just remember thinking that this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that because I felt like a victim when I was a kid, I didn't want to feel like a victim when I was a teenager. And so I ended up getting stabbed because of it.
Yeah.
And because I'd learned that if you ask for help, no one comes. When I got into loads of debt, I didn't ask for help. And it's a pattern.
Have you broken that pattern?
I was arrested not that long ago. I think I have. No, it was during lockdown. I was writing this book and I was trading. I'm still trading, amazing.
Are you still trading?
I'm still trading, but just with my money and very carefully. It kind of gives me a structure to the day. And the phone rang and it was the financial police in London. They said, we're going to arrest you for stock market, whatever. And I thought that I hadn't done anything wrong. And then, because it was lockdown, I had to go into London and find a lawyer and sit in his office, and they arrested me remotely over Zoom. And I remember thinking I could just get up and walk out, and there's nothing you can do. So it was surreal, but I thought that I'd really... Did
you fight that arrest, or are you...
Yeah, no,
Or we're going to have to break up the book tour?
No. So it went on for like 10 months, and then they just dropped the case, because I hadn't done anything wrong. And, but stress again. Yeah. And I just thought, this time, there's a book coming out, nothing is going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And just going to be...
Nothing is going to go wrong.
No, I don't think so. But, it's just that feeling like you're going to mess things up.
Well, I mean, when you think about him being called into a conference room and sitting at the head, doesn't that all remind us? And many of you probably were not called into the principal's office, but something tells me that Chris and I both were.
Yeah.
It had that feeling, of being a young kid again and scared. And particularly since your childhood was scary. Yeah. There's something about that is hard. Mm-hmm. Let's talk libraries. Talk about when you fell in love with reading and also your work with libraries.
I was a big reader from a kid. I would choose books over TV, which my kids would never do. And I really want them to read one of my books, but they always say they're going to wait for the TV adaptation, so they don't have to read it. I was a big reader from really young. My dad used to take me to the library and leave me there for hours, and I loved it and grew up reading Stephen King, things like that. And
he read Stephen King at a very young age.
I did when I was 10, And it was really... But I had a library copy, and I used to just kind of hide it in the children's section of the library, and I always imagined like another kid picking it up and reading it and having a really bad nightmare. So whole life was a reader, and it was actually when I was about to turn 30, I read a book called The Last Child by John Hart, and I love John Hart, and it's this beautiful missing person kind of mystery. And then I read that John Hart used to be a lawyer, and he just quit his job because he was miserable, wanted to write. And so I paid back all the money, and my boss called me and offered me a promotion, and I just quit my job because John Hart had done it, which was mad. Like, looking back, I was like, we sold our house and car, and I was broke after that. Really tough. And they were the John Hart, like, fallow years of my life, and I was really struggling. And then I got a job in the library. I was trading, working in the library, writing the book, doing PR for the other book, and it was like, never saw my kids. But working in the library was the best job I've ever
And that was in 2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were working in the library.
Working in the library.
And you loved it. You used it for research, I've read.
Used it for research for this book. I had the idea for this book, and it was like a simple pitch, and I didn't know where to set it. And I was writing bits and pieces without any setting, and I was looking, and I was just flicking through it like a non-fiction book, and there was a picture of Missouri in this place called Dogwood Canyon, and it just felt like this connection. I'm really visual, and it felt like I had this connection to this place, and so the book found its home. And I wrote a lot of it while I was working in the library and did loads of the research there.
So, as I mentioned to you earlier, and as you can see, by the way, with this accent, doesn't everything sound better? Like bartenders,
really?
barkeeper. I was like,
what?
that sounds so distinguished.
My accent, I used to think I was really posh. Like, I used to think I was like a Hugh Grant, and like for loads of my life. And then I met some Americans, and they told me no.
They must have been very posh, because I can't tell the difference between what a fancy and a not fancy.
I'm from a not fancy part.
Okay, well, it works, okay? But as I mentioned, you really focus most of your writing in small-town America.
Yep.
How many times have you been to America?
Not enough, really.
Go ahead and tell them.
I went like twice, and to none of the places I've been to, but when I was...
So he's been to America twice. Is this your third time?
Fourth now, because I went to New York to meet Jen.
Oh, yeah.
Who sat at the back so that I wouldn't call her out, like I wouldn't find her. Yeah, my super agent. So I went there. But I went when I was 21. I had this big trip planned around the US with my friend Scott, and our first stop was Miami. So we got to Miami, and yeah, I know. And straight away I fell in love with a barmaid, Natalie, her name was.
Barmaid, see?
Yeah.
Doesn't that sound so distinguished?
Yeah, so I fell in love with her and said to Scott, let's stay in Miami instead of travelling around. And I checked us into a 5-star hotel, Lowe's, with my credit card to like sweeten it for him, because he'd missed out on his trip of a lifetime. We just stayed there for months and then flew home again. Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
well,
so I missed out.
Have you ever set a book in Miami?
I haven't.
No. Okay. So he sets his books in small town America. And one of the things that we've been talking about with our team of readers, but also we're producing with Chris the show into a television series with the great Sue Nagel, who ran HBO, and Sarah Gibbons, who is an incredible writer.
Amazing.
And she's amazing.
Yeah, she's so much fun as well.
Talking a lot about her. And one of the things that we've spoken about during this creative process is how Chris understands small town America. I'm from Midland, Texas, so I happen to understand small town America too, in such an amazing way. The details are impeccable, and you've never traveled there, but the research must be comprehensive.
It is, but I always think it's just people. And I think I understand people quite well and what people care about. And so once you tap into that, I think the rest of it kind of falls into place. But the research is just a nightmare. And I get really obsessed with certain details. Like there's a very short bit in it. It's one paragraph where Patch works in a mine, and that was like a month of learning what a miner does. And I did that for so much of the book. Like I learned about ballet and fishing, and just everything that you could learn about. And some of it's cut down to like 2 sentences, and it's like a month just burnt on it. And I know that I miss my deadline by a mile all the time, and they're really forgiving of me, but I can't do it any other way. Like it gets overwritten and then cut way back. So what the book ends up at like 130,000 words is probably 500,000 or something mad like that.
The research in which he must have, he sort of is underplaying it, because once you read this book, and as I said earlier, it's genre bending. When I met him, the first thing I said to him is, I've never read anything like this. That at one moment when you're reading it, it's a thriller. It's a straight up, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Then it becomes a love story between all types of loves.
Yeah.
Between a grandmother and their granddaughter, best friends, romantic love.
Yep.
It's also, as I said, the character is very much a town. And it took me back to the town I grew up in, even though it's in a different part of the country. You know, some of the fear that happens in this town reminded me of things that happen in Midland, Texas, and what that felt like for a small town to rally behind it. But so anyway, you worked in a library. Mm-hmm. Where would you even put this book in the shelves?
It's funny because I was working there when my last book came out, and I tried shelving it in different places. And like, if you put it in crime fiction, which is what the UK is like, mystery is here.
Yeah.
It's crime fiction in the UK. You just get like die-hard kind of Lee Child fans that come in and pick it up, and it doesn't really it's not really that sort of book, so it kind of doesn't work for them as well. And then I shelved it in general fiction, and it got borrowed like 10 times as much. But it's the last thing I think about when I'm writing.
Yeah.
It's the thing that, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because if you're writing a story that spans 27 years, the book starts in 1975, and if you're telling someone's life story, like if you think of your own lives, there's no one genre that it fits into. Like, I was a victim of crime, but I wouldn't shelve my story in crime fiction. And so if I'm telling a big story, it needs to encompass all of these things, you know, like first love. You can go in the book from reading about an abduction and Patch being held somewhere in the dark and falling in love in the dark with a girl he's never seen, who may or may not be real. You know, they think he kind of conjured her out of his mind because of the trauma. But then the next scene will be them getting ready to go to their first prom. And it's that I kind of love, because the kind of light makes the dark even darker. And when you're writing it, it's a bit, if you're writing a tough scene, I write out of order and then put it back together, because writing a tough scene takes a toll. You know, after a while you feel a bit like you're drowning, and then you write a love scene and it's like coming up for air.
Yeah. I have some quotes from people that and then I want to get to some questions from you all, and I have more to ask him, so don't all raise your hands at once. But these are some quotes. I just looked back for Patch and Saint in my text messages. I abbreviated this so much, but for people at NBC, our team read it, my sister read it, my father read it, my boss read it, my husband read it, Oprah read it, okay? I'm not going to tell you who says what. Y'all can guess later if that's fun for you. But here, this is exactly what he's describing about the light and the dark. Here are just a few of what I found in my text messages. Oh my gosh, I'm tearing up. I love how Patch says entirely and absolutely to Saint. I just said that to my baby girl. I mean, here I go. My heart is breaking. Oh, Misty. I'm obsessed with this book right now. I can't even work. Patch and Saint's love makes me cry. But now I'm laughing about Sammy. This is fun for you to hear, right?
It is. In my mind, they're all Oprah as well.
None of those have been Oprah, okay?
Okay.
Don't tweet Oprah. I will be so mad at you. But this might be Oprah. I have never read a crime novel before, never explored this genre. Too anxiety-filled, nerve-wracking for me. I cannot believe Saint went looking for Eli Aaron alone. Who is that brave? It was so hard for me to turn the page. I had to count to 3. Good, the chapters are short. Oh, Jenna, I see what you mean about part room, part mockingbird, part goldfinch. Whitaker is an extraordinary writer. And so young and handsome.
That's all I'm going to take from this as well.
Enjoying this experience so much. Thanks again. I just finished All the Colors, and I am in tears. I see why you love it. I just finished one word, wow. And finally, I got this one yesterday. Jenna, I just finished the book. I'm on a flight home, and I am so grateful to be in a window seat because I am weeping. Holy cow, what a book. What an ending. What characters. They will haunt me forever in the best possible way.
Thank you for
Wasn't that fun to do that?
Yeah, thank you. It's really cool. Yeah.
Y'all better not tell. If any of y'all know Oprah and you tell her I read her text, I'll be mad, okay? We have just a few minutes left, and I would love to take some questions from you. So please, for Chris.
Great. Leslie Poole with the Seed Foundation. I work with lots of young people.
I love the Seed Foundation.
She was a teacher.
I was a teacher at her school.
So if you could look back at your 18 or your 22-year-old self, like what advice would you tell yourself to keep pushing?
First, I'd say give your phone to the man with the knife. That would be an easy one. But I think sometimes when something bad happens when you're a kid, it feels like the future is laid out for you already. And I would just tell myself that my story is just mine to tell and no one else's.
And I would say, too, the Seed Foundation, the Seed schools are schools, they're public boarding schools for kids that are at risk or disadvantaged. Okay. I taught in West Baltimore, which was probably a similar neighborhood to where your school was. And I would say kids can do extraordinary things, and not having a college degree means, and don't tell this to my kids, but means absolutely nothing. There is talent in all of our kids, no matter where they're born, no matter where they live, and they just need people to see that in them. Other questions for Chris? If you guys don't have more, yes.
I'm Jenna.
And there's one right here too.
I'm so fascinated by your writing process, how you write out of order. Can you talk about that? Because that makes no sense to those of us that don't write, but how does that work in your brain, and how do you stitch it together?
Really badly. It's a bit of a mess. So I spend the first year just writing dialogue, just nothing but dialogue between characters, and that's how I kind of get to know them. And then year 2, I write whatever I feel like writing. Like it might be, I'll know how the story's going to end, so I might write the ending. And then I'll leave the very last lines because they tend to change quite a bit. And then I'll go back, and year 3, it begins to look like a story. There's some kind of order to it. And then year 4, I cry because I think this is never going to be finished. I'm never going to do it. And then Jen comes in and the team, and I need a good editor. And I have really good editors, like my UK editor, US editor, they're brilliant. It's a bit like being lost for ages and then someone comes in to show you the way.
So are we going to have to wait 4 years till the next one?
Yeah, I think so. I'm writing it now. Yeah, but I think it will be 4 years.
Can you give us a little preview?
It's called The Timekeeper. It's a love story, and it's a bit Time Traveler's Wife meets The Fault in Our Stars.
Wait, what? I can't wait 4 years for that, Chris.
I know.
4 years, we could all be gone.
I know. I'm trying to pick up the pace a bit.
Wow, that sounds so great.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess at the moment, which is where it should be now. So.
Well, and he's also going on a massive book tour across the United States, then across the UK.
And then Europe, and then I'm back to the US in July. And I travel from like now until November, I think, something like that.
So will you write while you're on tour?
I can't. I can make notes, but I've never written a line of a book anywhere but at my desk. And I work across 3 screens, and so I just can't do it anywhere else.
Did you have a question?
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
There's so many great topics being talked about across, the festival today and this week. And what do you think is the power of novels and storytelling for all of these big issues? What is the future of how this can help kind of bring us together and talk through some of these issues?
I never have like a bigger goal than entertaining people, but I get that, that to me that it's everything. Storytelling is the most important medium, and I said I worked in a library and they kept it open during lockdown because it's that important for people, for the escapism, and I think you can construct a world in a way that you can't through something visual like TV, when it's kind of built for you. And that's what I try and teach my kids. You can and you can read the book in different ways. And I always read, when I'm reading something, it will read differently depending on what's going on in my life. And so I think if you find the right story at the right time, it can be life-changing.
how old are your kids? And did they help in the creation of Patch and Saint?
They made it harder at every stage. They are 13, 10, and 3. And my 3-year-old is, she's the girl. There's 2 boys. And she's an angel, and she helps me by not sleeping much. So I'm awake all night writing, which helps. Yeah. And
the 13-year-old, I mean, I will say, this is a book. So when we talked about this seed school, I have a feeling this will be a book. If I was an English teacher like I used to be, that I would be having teenagers read.
I hope so. Yeah, I would encourage my 13. He'll probably do the audiobook. He's dyslexic, which I found out quite recently. Like, he loves reading, but has struggled, so he does audiobooks and just kind of loops the Harry Potter series over and over because he loves it so much. But my 10-year-old is the one that really wants to read it. He's the one that's most interested in what I'm doing, like at the moment, travelling around. And I made the mistake of like giving him a Zoom address account for me, and he just calls me all day. He got me just before I came in, and there's a big time difference, and like he's up really late wondering where I am, and yeah, it's very sweet.
That's amazing what you're doing to get the book out. Here's a question right here.
Thank you. As you talk about the production and what this looks like in a visual medium, do you have any idea of your dream who would play your roles?
I get asked that so much.
It's so hard.
Yeah, it's
really,
imagine. Really
I'm
tough.
like, and can I have a pen so I can take some notes?
Yeah, people like to suggest all the time to me, which I really enjoy, but to me they are their own people, and I can't see them as anyone else. And people really like, for Patch, the guy in The Bear, which I don't think is right. I don't think it, because Patch is kind of
Patch
like
is
that.
hot.
Yeah. Well, people love him, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's gentler than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of a lot softer. So it's a really tough one. With my last book.
Well, I know gentle sounds weird, but he is. He's lovable.
He is. Yeah. My last book, Disney optioned, and the lead character in the book was a 13-year-old girl, and I had parents sending me videos of their kids like, reading bits of it and singing. Yeah, and like, I have no say in the casting, but some of them were so good, like singing songs that the girl sings in the book, and really impressive. But who do you think for the characters?
Well,
you must have had this.
Okay, so let me just say this. This is my 13th book to option, not in that order, but we have 13 projects.
Yep.
With no other projects have we been approached by very famous directors for Zooms, by very famous actors.
I really want to know who this is now, really bad.
Well, Carrie Funkenega, who did
that one.
True Detective,
wow.
read it and asked to meet with us. I mean, we're in earliest stages, although I told Chris on the way here, I read the pilot. I read the first episode.
It's so exciting.
So we're in early stages, and we feel so good about it. But the demand for this book, for example, Eddie Redmayne was just on our show. I mean, I feel like I'm a name dropper. It's gone from Oprah to Harry. Keep dropping. Drop it a little more. Eddie Redmayne was on our show, and he had worked with Sue Nagel, the other producer, who is just fantastic. And he said, "Is there a part for me in it?" And I don't know that he's very cool. I don't know that he's Patch. I think he's a little. But he could.
We'll find something for us.
Sammy. What about Sammy?
Yeah, it would be a good Sammy. Yeah.
What about Sammy?
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet, but I think this will be a really fun one to cast because the characters have such depth. And as Chris mentioned, it is epic in scope. I think before we go, you have to just give them like the synopsis. You've kind of done it, but give the synopsis.
So the top line that I had from the very beginning, it was, it's 2 abducted teenagers fall in love in the pitch black basement. They're being held in, having never seen each other. The boy escapes, can't find his way back to the girl. The police don't believe that she's real, but he knows in his heart that she is. And while he's missing, his best friend, his only friend, is searching for him. And then they kind of, he comes back and they devote their lives to this search, you know, him for the girl and his best friend searching for the man that took them. And it just becomes such a, like, it changes their entire lives and the lives of everyone in the town, everyone connected to it. And you have to read the book to find out if she's real and if he manages to find her.
Yeah. Y'all better, by the way, he's selling these books. It's not even out till tomorrow, but what time are you selling these books?
I think like 5-ish, 4:30.
See, he's in trade. He understands the salesman in me, you know?
No,
I wore my little sales suit. I'm going to go up and so I'll be there selling too. But you can get the first copies of these books this afternoon, which nobody will have the option to do until tomorrow when the book comes out. So I'm actually racing home after my next panel so that I can talk about this book on my show, because I want everybody to get the chance to read it. It will change your lives, as I've read. So just before we end, my last question for you. All the Colors of the Dark. I mean, isn't it one of the most beautiful titles you have ever heard? And yes, one person clapped. That might have been his agent, but we appreciate it. You know, I think in a world that's, some can find dark, you can see darkness everywhere. But if you look, there's light everywhere too.
Yeah.
So I wonder what it means to you, and I know you don't have any grand hopes for people, but what you hope people get out of it.
I think because this terrible thing happens to Patch at the start of the book, everyone kind of writes him off. But his world opens up massively because of what happens. He leaves the town that he grew up in, a town that he'd never left before, and he might not have left had this thing not happened. He finds his way to art, like I did, you know, and it completely changes his life. He finds this gift because he begins to paint his vision of the girl that he was held with, because having never seen her, just from her words, you know, and the way that her voice is, and he's kind of just feeling his way in the dark, and paints her and becomes a really successful artist in the book. And so this terrible thing happens, and it just sets him off on this epic journey, and lets loads of the world in. So
I hope you all will read this with me. Don't be scared by the length. I read it in one weekend. My husband, who only reads like business and emails and news, you know, all the boring stuff that I'd hate to read, read it in 1 week last week, and he said, why don't you pick more books like this? If you picked more books like this, I'd read more fiction, Jenna. And first of all, I do pick a lot of great books, Henry. But this one is incredible. Somebody asked us last night, should I have my teenage grandson read it or granddaughter? And we had different answers at the exact same time.
We did.
Because
yours was better.
It's for all genders, okay? It is for all people. It is a book that will haunt you and change you, and it is so propulsive that if you're going on vacation, pick it up this evening. You're going on vacation?
No, I want to know what time is the book signing.
Oh, what time is the book signing? And where? What time and where is the book signing? 5 o'clock at Marble Gardens. And tweet it out. You can tweet that part out. Leave the Oprah out of the tweet. Please spread it to other people that are here, because you'll get a chance to meet Chris, and he'll sign all your copies. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.